The NBA trade deadline is inching closer, and the Philadelphia 76ers are still looking for those final pieces to lift them up over the championship hump. With the Milwaukee Bucks making a coaching change and Joel Embiid continuing to play at an MVP level at a historic level right now, the championship window is wide open for them to take advantage of. But there's a new name that has entered the rumor mill and that the Sixers have been connected with in trade talks that I want to talk about today, that being Malcolm Brogdon. Now, before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 80.2% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel just yet. We have plenty of big plans right over here on Sixers Digest, and we have an awesome Sixers team that has been a blast to talk about from start to finish this season. Still plenty to go down with the trade deadline inching closer and the championship search still going on. So make sure that you guys are hitting that subscribe button to stay with us every step of the way. Now, to talk about the initial report with Malcolm Brogdon today, I want to begin by pulling up the first report from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points here, and Brett writes, quote, Malcolm Brogdon has been made available in trade talks by the Portland Trailblazers in recent weeks, sources said. The Philadelphia 76ers, Magic, Knicks, and Lakers have all talked with the Blazers recently regarding Brogdon. It continues to look unlikely that Portland will make Jeremy Grant readily available for trade conversations. And I did want to include that last part because I have seen some whispers about Jeremy Grant as a potential fit, obviously a process guy there. But Malcolm Brogdon has all these, I guess, a unique kind of parallel with the Sixers organization to this point. That we know that he did win Rookie of the Year over Joel Embiid in their first season in the NBA, that being primarily because of Joel not playing enough games. I believe he played 31 in his rookie season, so you kind of understandable there. And Malcolm Brogdon has been a guy who the Sixers have played against in the postseason, who's a guy that has had a really high level of success around the NBA. Frankly, I think more than he is given credit on a national scale, that the biggest concern in Brogdon's game has always been the injuries, that he's been a guy that has had some injury struggles, has not been able to be healthy, but when he is playing his best, he is a very high-level guy. And to dive into his stats completely, I did want to pull these up here, that just last season with the Boston Celtics, averaging 14.9 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shot a ridiculous 44.4% from three. That is a career high for him last season on 4.4 attempts per game. And this season, he has picked up right where he's left off with the Portland Trailblazers, averaging 15.5 points per game, 5.3 assists, 3.6 rebounds in 27.3 minutes per game there. He's shooting 42% from beyond the arc this year. Throughout his career, 39.1%. And as you can see, if you want to flash back even a little sooner with the Indiana Pacers, he was a 21.2 point per game scorer not too long ago. So the production is there for Malcolm Brogdon. And I also am a fan of this fit, that when you think about what this Sixers team needs and what Malcolm Brogdon brings to the table, he's a guy that can play both on and off ball. He is a guy that I think is one of the cheaper value guys when we talk about, there's a lot of buzz about guys like Tyus Jones and even like the Bruce Brown kind of category. And before I dive fully into those kind of comparisons, something that I always like to note is the contracts and the money that has to work. That we all know with the modern NBA, with the CBA and all the constructs that come with it, that sometimes the dollar sign attached to a player is as important to getting a deal done as the actual player themselves. Now, as it pertains to Malcolm Brogdon here, looking at his contract, he's on a 2-year contract worth $45 million. That is a $22.5 million cap hit this year and a $22.5 million cap hit next year. Now, that is something that could be a negative to the Sixers, that we've talked plenty about the cap space plan for the Sixers, that they want to put themselves in a unique position as an organization where they have an MVP caliber player in Joel Embiid and a rising star in Tyrese Maxey, and then a blank canvas on the roster behind it with plenty of money and blank checks to attract the talent they see fit to elevate them to a championship contender. Now, committing to Malcolm Brogdon would obviously put a little twist in this plan, that in order for this to be the case, this would have to be a guy that Daryl Morey sees as a value or a guy that has at least a fit into next year as a future. Now, frankly, I've been pretty upfront that I don't quite see eye to eye with this cap space plan, that in today's modern NBA, you just don't see superstars switch teams through free agency, that so often it is these blockbuster deals, and the reason for that being that in the modern era where there are these trade requests, these public social media outcries, all these things, it doesn't make sense for a team to allow a player to walk for free, to outright sign in free agency that you don't get anything in return. By trading a player, you're at least getting something back. And I think a primetime example of this is DeJounte Murray with the Hawks. That DeJounte, his extension has not even kicked in yet. That he signed this massive deal this offseason. He is still on the original contract in which he was traded to the Hawks, in which they gave plenty to get him from San Antonio. Now they signed him to that contract, knowing that even if this does not work out, which clearly it is not, they at least can recoup some assets by flipping him in a deal rather than allowing him to walk in free agency. By doing that in this specific case with Malcolm Brogdon, you are adding that $22.5 million cap hit, and that you are giving yourself some flexibility to potentially flip him for a trade and not eating to the cap space entirely. Now, $22.5 million is not anything to overlook. That is a significant number. That is slightly less than Bruce Brown, which I do think is interesting to note. We've talked plenty about Bruce Brown, and I've seen a lot of people hyping him up as the potential missing piece, myself included. I'm quite a fan of Bruce Brown. I wouldn't go as far as to say he's the missing piece on this Sixers team, but I do absolutely believe that he would help this team in a major way, and if the price is correct, that is something worth exploring. But it's a different story to negotiate with Masai, with the Raptors up there, who are obviously obviously prioritizing building up assets and contending for the future. Now, on the other side of things, the Portland Trailblazers are, they're still building for the future, obviously, and have had a pretty disappointing season. But I do think that Malcolm Brogdon is a guy that they're not going to be as nickel and diming to make sure they get the most value for. He's been a guy that was kind of caught in the crosshairs of that Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday, all these moving parts, and he's kind of just been left out there in Portland to exist this season. And to his credit, he has continued to produce. And just a reminder for Sixers fans, if you do not remember how good Malcolm Brogdon was just last year in the playoffs with the Boston Celtics, that Brogdon scorched the Sixers for 16.0 points per game in 29.2 minutes. He also shot a blistering 52.3% on 6.3 threes per game. So last season in Boston, Brogdon took home the Sixth Man of the Year award, but then was traded this offseason as part of the deal that sent Drew Holiday to the Celtics. So as you can see there, that Brogdon Brogdon recently was a very productive piece on a contending team. That would be the mindset in bringing him to Philadelphia. Now, one of the pieces that I think is interesting here, that as much as Daryl Morey deserves immense credit for building up the assets and giving this team some flexibility for this season and moving forward, there's still limited trades that they can do. That you only get so many attempts at this, and you have to make sure that you prioritize and get the right deals done to maximize this team's chances. So as we take a look at this Sixers team on the depth chart, that there is a pretty clear top six with this lineup. Tyrese Maxey as point guard, Tobias Harris, Nico Batum, Joel Embiid, and then D'Anthony Melton and Kelly Oubre kind of dogging it out for that final starting lineup. I do think it is pretty clear that is the top six, and it will be interesting to see when D'Anthony Melton returns whether they elect to use him off the bench or plug him right back into that starting lineup. But I think that top six is pretty clear. Now, the debate being if you believe that is a top six that is ready to contend for a championship, that is a video for another day, but I did want to point that out. But when you look beyond that, Patrick Beverley as a guard off the bench, there's also Marcus Morris, Paul Reed, and Mo Bamba, of course, holding things down in the backup center spot. And then looking beyond that, Robert Covington, Daniel House, Jaden Springer, some concerns with the depth beyond that spot. So adding a Malcolm Brogdon to this mix, that is a guy that could produce some stable minutes and help this team in a major way. But is that the missing piece when you look at the positional things? Now, I do believe the Sixers team would benefit in a major way from another ball handler. I kind of have more of the mindset that if you don't think you want to step up and take that home run swing for a DeJounte Murray or a Zach LaVine or that caliber of needle-moving player, that I think Brogdon's a pretty nice alternative that at a cheaper price point, at a guy that has a somewhat similar skill set. I'll particularly compare him to DeJounte Murray. I'm not saying Malcolm Brogdon is as good as DeJounte Murray by any means, but he is a guy that I am more comfortable will play within the confinements of his role. He's a guy that won't interrupt things. I do believe he has a winning brand of basketball as it pertains to, and that he is a seamless fit on a contender like the Sixers. But I guess how much is the upgrade from Malcolm Brogdon or from Pat Bev to Malcolm Brogdon? Now, I think that is a pretty significant upgrade. I like Pat Bev. I'm happy with what he brings to this team, and frankly, I would have no issue with them sharing the court together. But would Malcolm Brogdon be the guy that elevates that kind of six-man role, is a guy that plays these type of minutes? He's proven that he can do it, and he has the ability to add it to this Sixers team. But I will say there is a part of me that the more I think it over and the more I talk it through it on this video, that maybe it could be best served passing on Malcolm Brogdon. That maybe it is better to prioritize a position of more importance, such as a high-caliber wing defender who could help lock up Jason Tatum. But I do understand the mindset of wanting another ball handler, having a Malcolm Brogdon-type piece that is able to provide some secondary offense when Tyrese Maxey is not on the floor. Another guy to have it be a true captain of the ship, run the offense, run the plays, and a guy that I think Nick Nurse could maximize quite a bit. But we will see. The trade deadline is ultimately cruising and getting closer. I do want to hear from you guys, your thoughts on Malcolm Brogdon. I did think it was interesting that it is a new name kind of in the mix. I had not heard that connection to the Sixers specifically all season, so I did want to bring that up right here on Sixers Digest. So let me know what you think about Malcolm Brogdon. I think I'm kind of talking myself out of it, that I think there are just bigger needs that this team could have, and they should jump on I guess you can throw Brogden on a little bit of the fallback on category, but not a guy that I think I'm ready to pound the table and pour out assets for at this point in time. But once again, I do want to hear from you guys, and make sure you are smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video, and I'll be talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.